Part 1. The Mirror of Lost Time. In the town of Thornawood, there was an old shop tucked between the bustling market stalls and the grand, ivy-covered manor at the edge of the forest. The shop was small and its windows dusty, but its sign, a faded mirror that swung in the wind, gave it an air of mystery. It was called the Mirror of Lost Time. Most of the townsfolk would pass by without a second thought, but there were whispers. Whispers of strange objects inside. Whispers of things seen in the mirror that weren't there when you looked away. Some swore they could hear the soft ticking of a clock inside, even though the shop never seemed to have a clock in sight. Others claimed the shop owner, a wiry man named Elias, had been there forever, though he was always as young as the first time they had seen him. Lila had never paid much attention to the shop before. She had heard the whispers, of course, as everyone in Thornawood did, but it was only when she was on her way home from the market, weighed down with baskets of herbs and bread, that she found herself standing outside the door of the Mirror of Lost Time. She couldn't explain it. One moment, she had been walking by with a smile on her face, thinking of the new recipe she wanted to try, and the next, her feet had carried her across the threshold. The bell above the door rang with a soft chime as she entered. Inside, the shop was nothing like she had imagined. Shelves were lined with all manner of oddities. Old books, glass bottles filled with liquids in every shade of the rainbow, intricate wooden carvings, and small trinkets that shimmered with an otherworldly glow. There was a faint smell of something ancient in the air, mixed with the scent of roses and cinnamon. And there it was. The mirror. It stood at the back of the shop, framed in ornate silver that caught the dim light of the shop. It was large, taller than Lila by several inches, and the glass gleamed, untouched by the dust that coated the rest of the room. It seemed out of place, perfectly polished and almost alive. As Lila stared at it, she could almost see the faint shimmer of movement within its surface, as though it was more than just a reflection. Elias appeared from behind a curtain in the far corner, his thin form emerging into view. His hair was dark and unruly, his eyes sharp yet warm. Despite his age, he must have been in his late 60s, maybe older. His movements were swift, his presence somehow timeless. "Good evening," he said with a slight smile, though there was an unsettling weight in his gaze. "I see you found my most precious creation." Lila blinked, caught off guard. "Your creation?" "The Mirror of Lost Time," Elias said, his voice low but clear. "It holds more than just your reflection. It holds the forgotten moments, the memories lost to the world, the threads of time that slip through the cracks, waiting to be found." Lila felt a shiver crawl up her spine. She wasn't sure why she felt uneasy, but she did. "Lost time? What do you mean?" Elias's smile widened, but it wasn't reassuring. It was as though he knew something she didn't. "The mirror is a door, of sorts. A window into places, times, and moments that never fully made it into the world. The ones people forget. The ones that could have been, but never were." Lila stepped closer, drawn to the mirror, though every instinct in her screamed to turn away. She couldn't explain it. There was something hypnotic about it. As she stood before the glass, her reflection seemed distant, as though she were looking at herself through a fogged lens. And then, it happened. The glass of the mirror shimmered, and for a moment, Lila swore she saw something moving within it. It wasn't just her reflection, it was a memory. A fleeting image of herself as a child, laughing with her mother in the garden, her hair in messy braids, the sun shining bright. It was so clear, so vivid that she almost reached out to touch it. But then, as quickly as it had appeared, the image vanished, leaving only her own reflection standing in the dim shop. She recoiled, her breath catching in her throat. Elias, who had been watching her carefully, nodded. "It's more than just a reflection, Lila. You saw something, didn't you?" I saw myself," she said, her voice trembling. "But it wasn't just me. It was a memory, a moment I hadn't thought of in years." He gave her a knowing look. "The mirror shows what you've lost, what you've forgotten. It pulls those moments from time itself, the moments that slip through the cracks and never make it into your memory. Sometimes they're happy, Sometimes they're painful, but they're all important. Lila turned back to the mirror, staring at her own reflection, but this time she felt the weight of the past pressing down on her. Why does it show these things? What is the purpose of it? Elias's expression darkened for a moment, his eyes glinting with something unreadable. The mirror doesn't just show memories, Lila. It can also take them. It can give you a chance to relive them, but it can also pull you into them. If you're not careful, you might get lost in time. Lila swallowed, feeling a tightness in her chest. Lost in time. It is a dangerous thing to meddle with memories, especially those that should remain forgotten. People who try to live in the past, to change what has already been, often find themselves trapped, unable to return to the present. Lila looked at Elias, a mixture of fear and curiosity in her eyes. And you can change time? With the mirror. The old man's gaze softened, and he sighed. Not quite. The mirror shows what was, and what could have been. But it doesn't change what is. That's the trick. The mirror offers a glimpse into the past, but it also teaches you that the past can never truly be relived. What matters is what you do with the time you have now. Lila's mind raced. She had always wondered about the choices she had made, the paths not taken. She'd wondered what would have happened if she had been braver, if she had said something she had never said. Now, standing before this strange mirror, she could feel the pull of it. What if she could go back? What if she could fix the things she had lost? But Elias's words echoed in her mind. You can't change what is. The thought chilled her to the bone. Why are you telling me this? Lila asked, her voice shaky. Why show me the mirror? Elias paused before answering, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Because, Lila, I've seen something in you. A curiosity. A longing for something more than what you've had. The mirror has a way of finding those who seek answers, whether they know it or not. And I believe you have already seen what it is capable of. Lila's heart thudded. She had only just arrived, and already, she felt herself pulled into something much larger than she could comprehend. The mirror was not just an object. It was a portal to something more, a force that could pull on the threads of time itself. Elias took a step back, his voice lowering. But be careful, Lila. Once you look into the mirror, you may find yourself unable to stop looking. And once you've seen what could have been, it's hard to accept what is. Time is not something to be toyed with. Lila looked into the mirror again, feeling a tug in her chest. It called to her, the images within it flickering like flames in the wind. She didn't know if she was ready for what she might find. But she couldn't turn away. Not now. Part 2. The Choice of Time. Lila stood in front of the mirror, her reflection staring back at her, but it wasn't just her face that she saw. There, in the shimmering glass, was the echo of a memory, a distant moment she had almost forgotten. It was her as a child, running through the garden at her family's estate, laughing with her mother as they danced between the rows of wildflowers. The sunlight bathed them both in a warm golden glow, and the world seemed so simple back then. The memory was so vivid, so real, that it felt as though she could reach out and touch it. Do you see it now? Elias's voice broke through the heavy silence in the room. The mirror doesn't show just memories, it reveals the paths not taken, the moments that slipped through the cracks, the roads you never walked down. Lila's fingers hovered over the surface of the mirror, but she stopped herself. I remember this, she whispered, almost to herself. I remember that day. Elias nodded, his expression somber. We all have moments we wish we could relive, choices we wish we had made differently. But the mirror doesn't just show you what was, it shows you what could have been. It can offer you a glimpse into that lost time. But be careful, Lila. Once you step into it, once you touch that thread, you may never want to return to the present. Lila's mind spun. The possibility of reliving a moment she had lost, of seeing the path she never took, it was tempting, like a forbidden fruit. She could feel the pull of it, the desire to see her mother again, to relive a day from a time when things had felt simpler. But deep down, She knew that living in the past was a dangerous thing. "How do I know what's real?" she asked, her voice trembling. "How do I know if it's just a memory, or if the mirror is making it real?" Elias's eyes darkened for a moment. The mirror shows you what the heart desires most. It brings the lost time to life. But the moment you step into that memory, it becomes part of you. It becomes real, even if it is only for a moment. And once you've felt that, once you've relived a lost piece of your life, you may not want to leave. Lila glanced back at the reflection of herself in the mirror. She saw her younger self again, standing beside her mother, holding her hand. The image was so clear, so beautiful, that she almost forgot where she was. But then a thought crept into her mind. What would happen if she stayed there? If she reached out and stepped into that memory? What would she lose? Her mother's laughter echoed in her mind, but it was distant, almost like a dream fading from her grasp. Lila shook her head, trying to push the temptation away. "What happens if you get lost?" Lila asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Elias stepped closer to her, his gaze now intense. "If you lose yourself in a memory, in a moment that wasn't meant to be, you risk unraveling the present. Time is a fragile thing, Lila. If you keep reaching for what has already passed, you may end up leaving nothing for the future. Some memories are meant to stay lost. Some paths are meant to remain untaken." Lila turned her gaze back to the mirror. The image of her mother, the sunlight streaming through the garden, it all felt so real. Could she really leave it behind? Could she choose the present over the past? And yet, the present wasn't what it used to be. Her mother was gone. The house they once lived in was now sold to strangers. The world had moved on without her, and sometimes it felt as though she had been left behind. "Is there a way to change things?" Lila asked, her voice cracking. "Can I really go back and change my decisions?" Elias's face softened, his expression filled with a kind of quiet sorrow. "Time does not give you the power to change the past, Lila. It can only show you what might have been. The path you walked is yours, and the lessons learned along the way are part of who you are now. But the past is a shadow that follows you, not something you can rewrite." Lila swallowed hard, her chest tightening with the weight of his words. "But if I could change things, if I could undo the mistakes." "You cannot undo what has already been done," Elias interrupted, his voice firm. "Time is a river, Lila. You cannot step into the same water twice. It is what it is, and what you choose to do now, in this moment, is all that matters." Lila felt the pulse of the mirror against her skin, its shimmering surface almost inviting her in. She thought of her mother, of the soft hum of her voice, the way she used to hold Lila close and whisper that everything would be okay. That world felt so far away now, and she couldn't help but wish for just one more day with her. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice small, almost pleading. "Are you sure I can't go back? Just for a moment?" Elias's eyes bore into hers, his gaze heavy with truth. "The past cannot be relived, Lila. Not like you imagine. The mirror can show you what was, but it can also trap you in what could have been. There's a fine line between remembering and living in the past. And once you've crossed it, you may never find your way back." Lila's fingers brushed the surface of the mirror, the cool glass tingling beneath her touch. She could see herself there, her younger self, laughing with her mother, so carefree. The mirror seemed to pulse, as if encouraging her to take that step. But something inside her, a voice, a quiet whisper, told her that this was not the path she should take. She had already chosen this life, this time. The past had shaped her, but it could not define her. With a deep breath, Lila pulled her hand away from the mirror. The reflection of her younger self flickered, fading, like smoke in the wind. "I understand now," she said, her voice steady. "I can't go back. I have to move forward." Elias's expression softened, and he gave a slow nod. "The future is the only thread you can control, Lila. The loom of time doesn't offer you second chances. What you choose to do with this moment, this life, is the only thing you can shape." Lila stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of his words settling into her heart. She had lived in the past for far too long, clinging to memories that no longer served her. It was time to let them go. And as she turned away from the mirror, she felt something shift within her. It wasn't as if the past was erased, it would always be there, a part of who she was. But now, she could move forward. She could shape the future. As she stepped toward the door of the shop, Elias's voice called out one last time. Remember, Lila, the mirror shows you what you seek, but it also asks you what you're willing to leave behind. Lila nodded, understanding now that her journey had never been about changing the past. It was about choosing to live in the present and moving forward, no matter how uncertain the road ahead might be. With one final glance at the mirror, she stepped out into the cool night air, the door closing softly behind her. Part 3. The Threads of Fate. Lila walked through the streets of Thornwood, but she was no longer the same person who had stepped into the mirror of lost time earlier that evening. The weight of Elias's words had settled deep within her, and for the first time, she felt the true gravity of what she had just done. She had chosen to leave the past behind. But what did that really mean? She had thought that the mirror, the glimmers of memories it offered, were enough. That the glimpse of her mother, of the life she used to know, could bring her peace. But Elias had been right. You couldn't undo what had already been. And now, she had to face the consequences of moving forward, of letting go of something she had clung to for so long. The street lamps flickered as she walked, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and fade in the night air. The town was quieter now, its streets deserted, the only sounds coming from the rustle of leaves and the faint hum of the night wind. She didn't mind the solitude. She needed the time to think, to process everything that had just happened. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, her soft laughter, the warmth of her embrace, the smell of fresh bread baking in the kitchen. Those memories had been so vivid, so real, that she had almost lost herself in them. The pull had been strong, stronger than she had anticipated. But Elias had warned her. The mirror wasn't just a reflection of time, it was a doorway, a temptation that could trap you if you weren't careful. And Lila knew that if she didn't keep moving forward, if she didn't allow herself to let go, she would remain stuck in the past forever. But what was next? What did she do now that the past was gone? The future felt like an empty canvas, and she wasn't sure where to start painting. As she wandered further into town, her thoughts were interrupted by a figure emerging from the shadows. It was a woman, tall and cloaked in a dark shawl, her face obscured by the hood she wore. For a moment, Lila's heart skipped a beat, her instincts telling her to be cautious. But then the woman spoke. "Lila," she said, her voice soft but authoritative. "You've made your choice." Lila froze, her breath catching in her chest. How did this woman know her name? And why did she feel so familiar? "I've been waiting for you," the woman continued, stepping closer. Her presence was calm, but there was a sense of urgency in her eyes. "There are things you don't understand yet. Things you must learn." Lila took a step back, the instinct to protect herself rising within her. "Who are you? And how do you know what I've chosen?" The woman lowered her hood, revealing a face that was both striking and ageless. Her eyes were a deep shade of green, glowing faintly, almost as though they reflected the stars themselves. Her long, dark hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. But there was something unsettling about her, something that didn't sit right with Lila. "I am known as Nissa," the woman said, her voice now almost a whisper. "I am one of the keepers of the loom." "The loom," Lila repeated, her mind racing. She had heard the term before, but it had always seemed like some strange metaphor. Nissa nodded. "The loom of fate. The threads of time. I am here because you have crossed a threshold, Lila. You have chosen to live in the present, but the past still holds power, and it will not let you go so easily." Lila felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "What are you talking about?" Nissa's gaze was unwavering, intense. "The mirror only shows you what you've lost, but there are others who seek to control time itself. And they won't stop until they have what they want." Lila took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. What do you want from me? Nissa stepped closer, her eyes locked on Lila's. I want to help you, Lila. The mirror has shown you the past, but it has also revealed a truth you are not ready to face. There are those who wish to manipulate the threads of time, use them for their own gain. If you don't stop them, they will unravel everything you've worked so hard to restore. Lila frowned. How can I stop them? I don't even understand what you're talking about. I just wanted to move on. I wanted to let go. Nissa smiled, though it was a somber smile, filled with understanding. The past is not something that can simply be discarded. It is a part of you, Lila. And the choices you make today will determine whether you live in the present, or whether you fall prey to the forces that seek to control time. Lila took a step back, trying to digest everything she had just heard. But I don't have the power to stop anyone. I can't even control the mirror. How am I supposed to stop these people? Nissa's expression softened. You already have the power, Lila. You just don't realize it yet. The mirror revealed a part of you, your connection to time, to the loom. You are the weaver now. And with that power comes the responsibility to protect the balance. Lila shook her head, her thoughts swirling. But I'm just one person. How am I supposed to stop something as big as this? Nissa reached out and placed a hand on Lila's shoulder, her touch warm despite the cool night air. You're not alone, Lila. You will have help. But you must choose now. The threads are in motion. Time is a river, but the course can still be changed. It's up to you to guide it. Lila stood in silence for a moment, feeling the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She had chosen to leave the past behind, to move forward. But now she realized that her journey was just beginning. There was more at stake than her own personal regrets. There were forces at play that she couldn't yet understand, and they would stop at nothing to bend time to their will. I'll help you, Lila said, her voice firm with determination. I'll do whatever it takes. Nissa's eyes softened. Then you must be prepared, Lila. Time is not kind to those who meddle with it. But if you are brave enough to face the threads of fate, I will be here to guide you. Part 5. The Thread Untwists. The man standing in the shadow of the streetlight was like a ghost from another time. His figure seemed to shimmer at the edges, as though he existed in a place just out of reach of reality. Lila's heart hammered in her chest, a mix of curiosity and fear twisting within her. She couldn't quite place him, but there was something deeply unsettling about his presence. Who are you? She repeated, her voice more forceful this time. The man stepped forward, revealing more of his features. His hair was dark, but his eyes, they were the strangest thing about him. They gleamed with an almost unnatural light, an intensity that was impossible to ignore. My name is Vincent, he said, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. And I have been waiting for you, Lila. She instinctively took a step back, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. Why have you been waiting for me? And how do you know my name? Vincent smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring smile. It was calculated, like a man who knew exactly what to say to pull someone into his orbit. I know many things, Lila. More than you can imagine. You've crossed a threshold, one that has brought us together. Lila's stomach twisted. She had never liked feeling out of control, and this man, this Vincent, was making her feel like she was suddenly part of a much larger game than she could comprehend. You're connected to the mirror, aren't you? Lila asked, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't just a guess, it was a certainty she couldn't ignore. Vincent's smile widened, but it wasn't a smile of joy. It was one of knowing. Yes, in a way. The mirror is just the beginning, Lila. It's a doorway, a tool. But it is not the only tool. There are others like it, others that can open different windows into time. Lila's head spun. Other mirrors? She had thought the one in Elias's shop was the only one, the only thing that had the power to show the lost threads of time. But if there were others, if there were more tools like this, what do you want from me? Lila asked, taking another cautious step back. She could feel the edge of panic creeping into her chest, threatening to spill over. Vincent's eyes darkened, and for the first time, his smile faded into something colder, something more dangerous. I want you to understand, Lila. The loom of time is not something that can be controlled easily. There are those who would seek to manipulate it for their own gain. There are others, like me, who understand its true power, and who know how to bend the threads of fate to our will. Lila swallowed hard. She had known, deep down, that something more sinister was at play. The mirror had not just revealed memories, it had shown her something far deeper. And Vincent, it seemed, was part of that darker side of time's manipulation. But the mirror doesn't change the past, she said, her voice trembling. It only shows you what could have been. Vincent's laugh was soft, almost mocking. Ah, but that's where you're wrong, Lila. The mirror doesn't just show what was, it offers something far more dangerous. It shows you what could be. And that is what makes it so powerful. It can pull the threads of the past into the present, creating ripples in time that will change everything. Lila's breath caught in her throat. Could it really be possible? Could the mirror, and others like it, truly reshape time? Could they rewrite history? You think you understand the mirror, don't you? Vincent's voice was low, almost teasing. But the truth is, you only see the surface. You've only scratched the very edge of what lies beneath. And if you don't learn how to wield its power, it will consume you. All of us. Lila's mind raced, her thoughts tumbling over one another. Vincent was right about one thing. She hadn't fully understood what the mirror was, or what it could do. All she had seen so far were the fleeting glimpses of her past. But what if it was more than just memories? What if it was a portal to something far more dangerous? What do you want from me, Vincent? Lila asked again, though her voice was quieter now, the tremor of fear growing. Vincent took a slow step forward, his eyes never leaving hers. I want you to join me, Lila. You are the weaver now. The loom of time is in your hands, and together, we can shape the world as it was meant to be. No more lost moments. No more broken paths. We can make time obey us. All we need is to pull the right threads. Lila took a step back, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She could feel the weight of his words sinking in, but there was something inside her, a part of her, that refused to be swayed. She didn't know everything about the mirror or the loom, but she knew enough to understand that what Vincent was proposing wasn't the answer. Time couldn't be controlled like that. It was too fragile, too delicate. Messing with it could lead to disastrous consequences. No, she said firmly, shaking her head. I can't help you. I won't use the loom to bend time to someone's will. Vincent's expression shifted, the amusement fading from his face, replaced with something darker, colder. You're making a mistake, Lila. Time isn't something that can be ignored. It has consequences. If you choose to resist, you will see how quickly it can unravel. You'll understand what happens when you refuse to play the game. Lila took another step back, her mind racing. She had to get away from him. She couldn't let herself be caught in his web. He was dangerous, and the things he was talking about, using time to manipulate the world, to bend it to his will, were more than just tempting. They were terrifying. You can't control time, Vincent, she said, her voice growing stronger. Time doesn't belong to anyone. It's not a tool for power. It's a flow, a force that moves forward, and no one has the right to twist it. Vincent's smile returned, but this time, it wasn't one of amusement. It was a smile that promised trouble. We'll see about that, Lila. Time always finds a way to reveal its true nature. And soon, you'll realize that you're playing a part in a much larger game. He turned, fading into the shadows, disappearing as quietly as he had come. Lila stood there in the dark street, her heart racing, her thoughts spiraling. She had just encountered a force more powerful than she had ever imagined. Vincent knew more about the loom, about the mirror, than she ever would, and that knowledge terrified her. But there was something else. Something in his words had struck a chord within her. He was right about one thing: the loom of time was hers now. She couldn't deny that. But that didn't mean she had to use it the way he wanted. She had made her choice. She had chosen to live in the present, to leave the past behind. And she would fight to protect that choice, even if it meant facing whatever consequences were coming her way. Lila turned and walked back to the shop, her mind still reeling from the encounter. The world of time, of mirrors, of lost moments and tangled threads, was far more complex than she had ever imagined. And now, she was at the center of it. But she would not let herself be controlled by it. Not by Vincent. Not by anyone. Part 6. The Unraveling Threads. Lila returned to the mirror of lost time later that evening, her mind still buzzing with the unsettling conversation she had just had with Vincent. The weight of his words hung over her like a cloud, each moment replaying in her mind as she walked the quiet streets of Thornawood. He was right about one thing: she was the weaver now. The loom of time was hers, and with it came a power that could reshape the world. But she refused to let that power fall into the wrong hands. Vincent's manipulation of time, his desire to control its flow for his own gain, it was something she couldn't allow. She would stop him, no matter the cost. The door of the shop creaked as Lila entered, the familiar scent of aged books and strange oils filling the air. Elias was nowhere to be found, which was unusual. She had become accustomed to his quiet presence, the way he seemed to always know when someone needed him. Tonight, however, the shop felt emptier than it ever had before. She crossed the room, her eyes instinctively drawn to the mirror. The glass shimmered in the dim light, as if it were alive, beckoning her closer. She hesitated for a moment before stepping forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She needed to understand more about what the mirror could do, what this power meant. She needed answers. She stared into the glass, watching her reflection shift slightly as the mirror's surface rippled. The faintest flicker of movement caught her eye, and before she could stop herself, her hand reached out to touch the cold surface. Instantly, the room around her seemed to dissolve. She felt a strange weightlessness, as though she were being pulled through time itself. The air around her grew thick and heavy, and a low hum filled her ears, vibrating through her entire body. And then, with a sharp breath, the world shifted. Lila found herself standing in a place that was at once familiar and unfamiliar. It was a version of Thornawood, but not the town she knew. The streets were quieter, the houses more worn, the trees that lined the streets gnarled and twisted. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and dust, and the sky above was a dull shade of gray, like the world was trapped in an eternal twilight. She turned, taking in her surroundings, and it hit her. This was a version of the past. A version of Thornawood that had never been. But that could have been, if only things had played out differently. Lila felt a chill creep up her spine. The mirror had transported her back, but not to a time she had known. This was an alternate thread, a lost path in the tapestry of time. She stepped forward cautiously, her heart thudding in her chest. It was as if the very air held its breath, as though the town itself was waiting for something to happen. Lila's gaze was drawn to a figure standing at the far end of the street. It was a woman, tall and cloaked in shadows, her face hidden beneath a hood. The woman turned to face her, and Lila gasped. She recognized the face instantly. Her mother. But this wasn't the mother she had known. The woman before her was older, her features more severe, her eyes clouded with something darker, something Lila couldn't quite place. There was an energy in the air, an unease that felt like it was wrapping around her like a vice. "You're not supposed to be here," her mother's voice said, though it was different from the voice Lila remembered. It was colder, filled with a sadness that made Lila's chest tighten. Lila took a step forward, her heart racing. "Mom, is that really you?" The woman didn't answer immediately. She studied Lila with a sharp gaze, as though trying to place her, to recognize her. But then, her mother's lips curled into a bitter smile, and she shook her head. "You should have never looked into the mirror, Lila. she said, her voice full of regret. "Now, you've seen what you shouldn't have. You've opened the door to something that can never be closed." Lila's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean? What is this place? Why does it feel like it's all falling apart?" The woman's gaze softened, though it was filled with sorrow. "This is a lost thread, Lila. A version of time that was never meant to exist. This is what happens when you try to manipulate the flow, when you try to undo what has already been." Lila's head spun. "But I didn't do this. I'm just trying to understand. I thought the mirror showed what was lost, what could have been." Her mother sighed, her shoulders slumping. "The mirror doesn't just show what could have been. It shows what should have never been, what was never meant to happen. You've seen a piece of this world, a version of it that might have been, but it was never meant to exist. Now, the threads are tangled, and the world is beginning to unravel." Lila stepped back, the weight of her mother's words sinking in. "Unravel? What do you mean?" "The fabric of time is delicate," her mother said, her voice darkening. "Every choice, every action, leaves a mark on the world. But when you try to force time into a mold it was never meant to fit, the consequences are catastrophic. You cannot bend fate without breaking it." Lila could feel the room around her trembling, the streets of Thornawood shaking as though they were no longer part of the world they had once belonged to. The sky above her darkened, the clouds swirling ominously. The ground seemed to pulse beneath her feet, as though something deep within it was waking. "What do I do?" Lila asked, panic rising in her chest. "How do I fix this?" Her mother's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "There is no fixing it now. Time is already unraveling. But you still have a choice. You can let it go, Lila. Let it return to what it was meant to be, and stop trying to control what cannot be controlled." Lila looked around, her mind racing. The version of Thornawood she had stepped into was crumbling, the very air around her thick with the weight of broken timelines. She could see the thread unraveling before her eyes, twisting and snapping, and she realized that everything she had seen, everything she had believed, was beginning to collapse. And then, the world started to shift again. The street, the town, her mother, all of it began to blur. The sky darkened further, the winds picking up, and the ground cracked open beneath her feet. It was as though the entire reality was folding in on itself, threatening to consume her. "Lila, you must choose," her mother's voice echoed through the chaos. "The past cannot be saved. You must choose to return to your world, to the present, or you will be lost in the threads forever." Lila's heart raced as the world around her seemed to collapse. She could feel the mirror's pull, the threads of time tugging at her, trying to draw her back into the reality she had left behind. She looked at her mother one last time, and with a deep breath, made her choice. Part 7, The Return to Nowhere. The world seemed to collapse into itself, a swirling vortex of shadows and light, of forgotten moments and possible futures. Lila could feel the air around her growing thin, like she was suffocating under the weight of time itself. Her breath quickened, her heart hammering in her chest as the ground beneath her cracked open. Her mother's voice echoed one last time through the disorienting chaos. "You must choose, Lila. The past cannot be saved. You must choose to return to your world, to the present, or you will be lost in the threads forever." The darkness around her deepened. The reality she had stepped into was crumbling, disintegrating before her eyes. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. Time was bending, twisting, unraveling like a fraying tapestry, and the weight of it all threatened to pull her under. But she had to make a choice. In that moment, the mirror's pull was stronger than ever. The threads of time that she had once felt so strongly tugging at her were now demanding her attention, begging her to reach out and step back into the comfort of what she knew. The memories, the lost moments, they all seemed so real, so close. Lila closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She remembered what Elias had said, what Vincent had warned her about, how dangerous it was to meddle with time. She couldn't stay in the past, couldn't let herself be lost to what could have been. She had made that choice already. The present was all she had, and it was time to fight for it. With a final, determined breath, Lila reached out. Her hand collided with something cold. The mirror's surface was smooth and hard, but there was no resistance. No hesitation. The moment her fingers made contact, everything shifted. The ground beneath her feet was solid again, and the chaos, the swirling vortex, faded into nothing. She opened her eyes to find herself back in the mirror of lost time. The shop was still, quiet. The mirror in front of her reflected nothing but her own face, calm and steady. Lila let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She was back. The danger was over. The world around her, her world, was intact. The mirror had stopped pulling her in. But there was something different about the shop now. The air felt heavier, the shadows stretching long across the room, as though the very fabric of reality had been shifted. She wasn't the same person who had walked in earlier. The journey through the mirror, the choice she had made to return, something inside her had changed. She felt it. A soft creak broke the silence. Lila turned, her pulse quickening. Elias was standing in the doorway of the back room, watching her with a solemn expression. His eyes flickered with something unreadable, something ancient. It was as though he knew everything she had just experienced. "You've returned," he said quietly, stepping further into the shop. Lila swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. She had seen so much, been through so much. But Elias's presence, the calm, steady force he was, brought her a sense of stability, a reminder that there was still something real to hold on to in this world of fractured timelines and lost memories. "I didn't know if I could," Lila whispered, her voice barely audible. "I thought I was lost forever, that the past would take me." Elias nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "You made the right choice, Lila. Time is a fragile thing. You can't change what's already been, but you can protect what's yet to come." Lila stepped closer to him, her mind racing with the implications of everything she had just experienced. "But what about the threads? What about Vincent and the others who want to control time?" Elias's expression darkened. "They'll always be there, Lila. The ones who seek to manipulate time for their own gain. They won't stop. But you've learned something important, something that many before you didn't. Time cannot be controlled. It must be understood, lived within. The moment you try to force it to bend, you risk breaking it. But if I can't control time, how do I fight them? How do I protect the future?" Lila's voice trembled slightly, the weight of her new responsibility settling heavily on her shoulders. Elias paused for a long moment, his gaze distant, as if he were seeing something beyond the present. "You don't fight time, Lila. You live it. You walk through it, step by step, moment by moment. You weave the threads, but you don't pull them too tightly. You don't try to control what you cannot see. Trust the flow. And when the time comes, you will know how to act." Lila nodded slowly, though the uncertainty still lingered within her. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't have the strength to stop the ones who sought to manipulate time. But she knew one thing for sure, she wouldn't be alone in this. Elias stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "Remember, Lila, the mirror may show you the past, the lost threads, but it also shows you the potential of the future. You are the weaver now. The choices you make, the moments you let slip by, they all create the pattern of what's to come." Lila stood still for a moment, reflecting on his words. She had always been someone who lived in the past, held on to the things she had lost. But now, Elias had given her a new perspective. She didn't have to control time. She just had to live in it, embrace it, and trust that the right choices would reveal themselves when the time was right. Her fingers brushed against the edge of the mirror one last time, and for the first time, she felt no temptation to reach into it, to relive the past. She had let it go. She had chosen the present. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady now, "for helping me see what I needed to." Elias gave a small smile, the lines of his face softening. You are ready now, Lila. The threads are yours to weave. And the loom of time, well, it's a lot more forgiving than you might think. It's not about perfection. It's about finding balance. As he spoke, the soft chime of the shop's doorbell rang in the distance, signaling that someone had entered. Lila turned instinctively, but Elias raised a hand, signaling her to wait. I think, Elias said softly, you've already made your first choice. But there will be more. Lila nodded, though the path ahead was still shrouded in uncertainty. Time, she realized, wasn't just a concept or a force to be wielded. It was a part of her. A part of everyone. And now, more than ever, she understood the responsibility that came with it. The door opened fully, and a figure stepped into the shop. Lila glanced over, expecting to see another customer, but what she saw was far more unexpected. It was Vincent. His face was calm, though there was an unmistakable tension in his posture. He looked at Lila with a quiet intensity, his eyes gleaming with the same dangerous allure they had held before. I see you've made your decision, he said softly, his voice carrying across the room like a faint breeze. But the game isn't over, Lila. Elias's expression shifted, and for the first time, Lila saw the flicker of concern in his eyes. The calm of the shop, the stillness she had relied on, suddenly felt fragile. And the presence of Vincent, the man who had tried to manipulate her into controlling time, reminded her of the battle that was far from over. Vincent took a step closer, his gaze fixed on Lila. You think you've escaped it, but you're wrong. Time is not something you can simply choose to walk away from. It will always find you. Lila's heart thudded in her chest. The fight for time, for control over. Part 8. The Tapestry of Fate. The air in the mirror of lost time seemed to freeze the moment Vincent stepped forward. His words were like a shroud, enveloping the room with the weight of an inevitable truth. Time, he was right. Time wasn't something that could be ignored. It wasn't something that could be so easily walked away from. No matter what choices Lila made, she would always be tethered to it, always bound to the flow of time. And with that connection came a responsibility, one she was only beginning to understand. Vincent's presence, like a dark cloud in the quiet shop, sent a chill down her spine. She turned to Elias, who stood silent, his gaze fixed on the newcomer. It was clear that whatever game was being played, Elias had known it was coming. Lila's fingers instinctively found the edge of the mirror once more, a comfort she hadn't realized she needed until now. The cool glass felt solid under her touch, and she drew a steadying breath. I thought I had made my choice, Lila said, her voice stronger than she felt. I chose the present. I'm not going to let you control time. Vincent's smile never wavered, but it grew colder, sharper. You misunderstand, Lila. I'm not here to control time. I'm here to offer you the power to shape it. You have already seen what the mirror can do, what it reveals. But I'm offering you something greater. With the loom, you can create the future you desire. You can bend it to your will. Lila shook her head. No, I won't bend time. I've seen what happens when you try to control it. I can't let that happen again. Elias stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Vincent, you know as well as I do that time cannot be manipulated without consequence. The flow, the balance, once disrupted, it cannot simply be repaired. The path you ask Lila to walk will lead only to destruction. Vincent's eyes darkened. Destruction? You speak of balance, Elias, but balance is an illusion. Time is chaos. It is a force that can be harnessed, controlled, and made to obey. You know this as well as I do. Lila turned to Elias, confusion flickering in her eyes. Is he right? Can time really be controlled? Elias gave a long sigh, as though the answer pained him. The truth, Lila, is that time is more than just a river that flows forward. It's a tapestry, woven from the choices we make, the paths we follow. It's delicate and interconnected, and each decision pulls at the threads. But control is not the answer. The more you try to control it, the more you risk unraveling it entirely. Lila's mind reeled, but there was something in Elias's words that grounded her, something that made her realize the true cost of manipulating time. She had seen the crumbling version of Thornawood, the unraveling world that existed when Vincent tried to pull the threads in his favor. No, she couldn't allow herself to fall into that trap. She couldn't become part of a future where time was controlled, bent to one person's will. "I won't do it," Lila said, her voice steady. "I won't let time be forced into submission. I choose to live in the now, to respect the present and honor the past." Vincent's gaze softened, but there was a cruel edge to his smile now. "You think you're choosing freedom, Lila, but you're choosing to be a slave to the flow. Time will not wait for you to catch up. You may choose the present, but the present will not be enough. You will come to understand that soon enough." Lila didn't flinch under his gaze, but inside, she felt a cold knot form in her stomach. His words gnawed at her, and she couldn't ignore the feeling that something much larger was at play. This was about more than just time. It was about control, about power. And Vincent was dangerous. He could bend and twist time, but that didn't mean he could control it. "I don't need to control time," Lila said firmly, her voice gaining strength with every word. "I need to understand it, respect it. I've learned that much. I've made my choice." Vincent's smile faltered, his expression hardening into something cold, calculating. "We'll see how long that resolve lasts, Lila. Time doesn't work that way. And neither do I." With a swift motion, Vincent turned and walked toward the door of the shop, his presence lingering like a storm cloud. Before he left, he glanced over his shoulder, his eyes flashing with something dark. "Remember this, Lila," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The loom of time is never truly in your hands. It always has a way of revealing the truth. And sometimes, the truth is a force more dangerous than any power you could wield." The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Lila was left in the silence of the shop, her heart still pounding in her chest. The weight of his words hung in the air, like a warning. She didn't want to believe it. She didn't want to believe that time would catch up to her, that her choice would lead to something she couldn't control. But deep down, she knew that Vincent wasn't just a man with a dangerous idea. He was a part of something much larger. Elias placed a hand on Lila's shoulder, his touch grounding her. "You did the right thing," he said softly. "But the road ahead is not without danger. You must remain vigilant, Lila. Time is fragile, and those who seek to bend it for their own purposes will not stop until they have what they want." Lila nodded, but the doubt still lingered. What if Vincent was right? What if the present wasn't enough? The weight of the loom, of the power she now held, felt heavier than ever. "I won't let him win," Lila said quietly, more to herself than to Elias. "I won't let time be controlled." Elias looked at her with a mixture of pride and concern. "You are the weaver now, Lila. You will be tested. But you must always remember, the threads you weave are not just for your own benefit. They are for the balance of time itself." Lila nodded, her resolve hardening once again. The mirror had shown her the way forward, but the journey was far from over. Time was a force that could not be controlled, but it could be understood. And she was determined to protect it, no matter the cost. Part 10. The Fracture Within. Lila woke the next morning to the quiet hum of the world outside her window, but the calmness didn't bring the peace she had hoped for. In fact, it felt unsettling. The power of the loom, the mirror, and the dark forces now tugging at the fabric of time had woven an undeniable tension in the air. Lila couldn't shake the weight of Vincent's warning. The truth always comes with a cost. She dressed quickly, her thoughts racing. No matter how much she tried to ignore it, she could feel the threads of fate pulling at her, drawing her back to the mirror of lost time. She needed answers. She couldn't keep wondering about the loom's potential, the truth Vincent had hinted at. It was time to face it head-on. She walked to the shop, the streets of Thornawood quieter than usual, as if the entire town was holding its breath. The sky above had darkened, thick clouds gathering in the distance, making the air heavier with each step. A storm was coming, and Lila felt it, both outside and within her. When she arrived at the shop, The door opened easily, the bell above it ringing softly in the silence. Elias was at the counter, his back turned, sorting through some old books. He looked up as Lila entered, his eyes soft with recognition, but there was a lingering concern in his gaze, as though he knew what was coming. "You've been quiet these past few days," he said, his voice calm but laden with a quiet weight. "Have you been thinking about Vincent's words?" Lila nodded slowly, walking toward him. "I can't stop thinking about them. About what he said. About time. About the loom." Elias closed the book he was holding and turned fully to face her. "And what do you think?" Lila hesitated, unsure of how to put the turmoil inside her into words. "I thought I could leave the past behind. I thought I could choose the present, and that would be enough. But now it feels like everything is unraveling. The mirror, the loom, Vincent is right. There are forces out there that want to control time, and if they succeed, I don't know what will happen." Elias's face softened with empathy, but there was a gravity to his expression. "Time is a delicate thing, Lila. You've learned more in these past few days than most do in a lifetime. But control, true control, is not the answer. Vincent seeks power. He wants to twist the threads of fate to his own desires, but that's a dangerous path. You've seen what happens when time is manipulated." Lila nodded, thinking back to the vision of Thornawood she had seen in the mirror, the broken, twisted version of the town, a result of someone trying to control the flow of time. It had been a warning, and now she understood it fully. But even knowing the consequences, she couldn't shake the feeling that Vincent wasn't the only one who could manipulate the threads. "I don't want to control time," she said, her voice firm. "I want to understand it. I want to protect it. But I can't do that alone. I need to know how to use the loom." Elias was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. "The loom is not a tool to be wielded, Lila. It's a responsibility, not a weapon. You cannot control it. It chooses those who are worthy to guide it. But even those chosen must learn to respect its power. If you pull too tightly on the threads, you risk breaking the tapestry entirely." Lila felt a shiver run down her spine. "Then what do I do? How do I protect time from Vincent and others like him?" Elias sighed, his eyes distant, as though he were seeing something far beyond the shop's walls. "There is a place where the loom is kept, a place beyond time itself. It is hidden, protected from those who would seek to control it. But you must be careful, Lila. The loom is not just a thing, it is a living force, and it will test you. The ones who have come before you, who have tried to wield it, have paid the price." Lila's heart skipped a beat. "Where is it? How do I find it?" Elias looked at her, his gaze intense. "The loom cannot be found by seeking it. It calls to those who are meant to find it. But you will need more than just knowledge. You will need courage. The mirror will show you the way, but it will not guide you. The path is yours to walk." The air in the shop felt heavy, as if the very weight of time was pressing in on her. She wasn't sure if she was ready for this journey, but there was no turning back now. She had already stepped into the weave of time. She had already chosen to fight for the present. And if that meant facing whatever lay ahead, whatever tests the loom would throw her way, then she would. "I'll do it," Lila said, her voice unwavering. "I won't let time be controlled. I won't let it be broken." Elias nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and caution. "Then you must go, Lila. You will have to face the loom, but be warned, it will not be easy. It will show you things you may not want to see. It will reveal the truth about time, and about yourself." Lila nodded, her resolve hardening. She knew this wasn't going to be easy. She had seen the consequences of trying to control time. But she also knew that she couldn't just stand by and do nothing. The loom, the mirror, they had shown her a path. Now it was time to walk it. With one final glance at Elias, she turned toward the mirror. She could feel the pull, a subtle tug at the threads of fate. This was where it all began. The loom was calling her. And she was ready. As her fingers touched the mirror, the world around her seemed to ripple once more. The shop dissolved, and Lila was swept away into the currents of time. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: she was no longer just a witness to time. She was a part of it, and it was time for her to find her place in the tapestry. Part 12. The Fracture of Choices. The loom hummed louder as Lila stood frozen before it, her gaze locked on the unraveling thread. The realization hit her like a tidal wave: the thread was hers, or at least it had been once. It was a choice she had never made, a moment she had never seized. The path that could have been, but was never allowed to grow. For a long moment, Lila couldn't move. Her heart felt heavy as the loom's glowing threads pulsed around her, each one representing a choice, a life, a moment in time. She had thought she could leave the past behind, but now she understood what the loom was trying to show her. The path she had never walked wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was a tear in the fabric of time, a fracture that rippled outward, threatening to unravel everything else she had built. The loom was not just a tool to guide time. It was a living, breathing entity, and it showed no mercy to those who ignored its delicate balance. "I can't change the past," Lila whispered to herself, the words more of a plea than a statement. The voice of the loom, ancient and wise, echoed around her once again. "You are the weaver, Lila. You cannot change what has been, but you can understand it. You can embrace it. The threads of time are yours to protect, but to do so, you must accept the choices you did not make." Lila reached out tentatively, her hand hovering over the unraveling thread. It pulsed with a faint light, a gentle reminder of a moment that could have been, but was lost to time. Her breath hitched as she realized the truth. The unraveling thread wasn't just a mistake, it was part of her, part of the world she had shaped. But it was slipping away, beyond her reach. "No," Lila said firmly, more to herself than to the loom. "I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose the choice I never made. I don't want to lose what could have been." The loom responded, its threads shifting in a way that sent ripples through the fabric of time. The hum around her grew louder, and the glow of the threads intensified. A deep, resonating voice filled the air, carrying with it the weight of ages. "Do not mourn the past, Lila." The loom spoke, its tone both soothing and stern. "The choices you did not make are the ones that have led you to this moment. They are woven into the tapestry, just as every other thread is. You are part of this weave, and you must not cling to what has already been. The present is where you must stand." Lila stood motionless, the truth of the loom's words sinking in. She had spent so long yearning for what she had lost, trying to recreate the path that had slipped from her grasp. But the loom was right. The past was gone, and the more she tried to hold on to it, the more she risked unraveling everything else. The loom's glow intensified, and the threads began to shift again, this time with purpose. Lila watched, transfixed, as the thread that had been unraveling slowly began to weave itself back into the tapestry. It was a delicate process, slow and fragile, as if the loom was carefully piecing together a broken part of time. "You must let go, Lila," the loom intoned softly. "Only then can you move forward. The present is not an empty space. It is the thread that binds the past to the future, and only through understanding it can you weave a future that is whole." Lila took a deep breath, her mind racing with the weight of everything she had learned. The loom wasn't just a mirror of time, it was a reminder of the delicate balance that held everything together. The present was a bridge between the past and the future, and if she tried to change one without understanding the other, she risked shattering it all. With trembling hands, Lila took a step back, allowing the unraveling thread to weave itself back into place. She didn't need to change the past. She didn't need to undo what had been done. She needed to accept it, to understand it, and to carry its lessons into the future. As the thread settled back into the weave, the loom's hum softened, and the glow of the threads dimmed slightly. The air around her felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The loom had shown her the truth. The past was part of her, but it was not her. She was the weaver now, and her choices would shape the future. Lila turned toward the light in the distance, her resolve firming within her. The loom was still before her, its threads shining with potential, but she knew now that her path wasn't to try to control time. It was to protect it, to understand it, to weave the threads that would guide the future. She turned to leave, but as she did, the loom spoke one last time, its voice calm and sure. Remember, Lila, the loom of time is not just a tool, it is a mirror. It will show you the path, but you must choose to walk it. The future lies in the choices you make now, and every thread you weave will ripple across time. Be mindful of your steps. Lila nodded, understanding the gravity of the loom's words. It wasn't about changing time, it was about accepting it, embracing the present, and moving forward with purpose. The future would be shaped by her choices, but it would never be in her control. It would always be in the weave of time itself. As she stepped forward, the world around her began to shift, and she was pulled once again from the loom's vast expanse. The light around her grew brighter, and with it, she felt herself being pulled back toward the present. Part 14. The Tipping Point. Lila's heart raced as she stood before Vincent, the words between them sharp like a blade, cutting through the silence. The weight of the loom, the responsibility she had accepted, it all hung in the balance now. She had returned to the present, but she knew Vincent's warning wasn't idle. There was still more to the game than she understood. I won't let you win, she said, her voice steady, her resolve hardening. Vincent tilted his head, his smile returning. You think you can stop me, Lila? You think that by choosing to protect the flow of time, you've somehow made the right choice? The future is not just about intentions. It's about power. And those who control it will always have the advantage. Lila clenched her fists, the words burning through her like wildfire. She could feel the looms hum deep within her, its power resonating with every choice, every step she took. She had made her decision. She had chosen the present. But even she understood the weight of time now. It was fragile, delicate, and when the wrong people tried to control it, chaos would follow. You've been using the loom for your own gain, Vincent, she said, stepping forward. You think that power can be wielded without consequence. But you're wrong. Time is a web, a tapestry. You can't pull one thread without unraveling the rest. Vincent's eyes darkened, his posture shifting slightly, as though considering her words. For a moment, there was a flicker of something, doubt perhaps, but then it was gone, replaced by a calculated determination. You still don't understand, he said, his voice low, each word dripping with cold certainty. Time is not a web. It is a battlefield. And right now, you and I are fighting over the most powerful weapon in existence. Lila's pulse quickened. You think the loom is a weapon? Everything can be a weapon if used correctly. Vincent's smile returned, but it was no longer friendly. It was sharp, dangerous, and I intend to use the loom to reshape the future, to control it, to make it bend to my will. You, Lila, are merely a pawn in this game, but I will give you credit. You've shown promise. Too bad it's wasted on someone who thinks that protecting time means letting it remain stagnant. The future needs to be shaped, Lila, not preserved. Lila could feel her stomach twist. She had seen what could happen when time was manipulated. The past, the present, the future, they weren't separate. They were all interconnected. And Vincent wanted to sever that connection. He didn't care about the balance. He only cared about power. I'm not your pawn, Lila said, her voice shaking with a quiet fury. And I won't let you turn time into a battlefield. Time is not meant to be controlled. It is meant to be lived. Vincent's gaze hardened. He took a step toward her, the space between them narrowing. You misunderstand, Lila. You think that by choosing to live in the present, you've somehow won. But you're wrong. The battle isn't just about the past or the future. It's about who controls the loom. And right now, that person is me. A silence filled the shop, thick and heavy. Lila's fingers tightened around the edge of the mirror as she tried to steady her racing thoughts. She had to think, had to figure out how to stop Vincent. But she knew now, more than ever, that this wasn't just about stopping him from manipulating time. This was about protecting it. About preserving the balance. Without warning, Vincent raised his hand, and Lila felt the air around them shift. A faint glow appeared around him, swirling like smoke. For a moment, she felt a surge of panic, but then something deeper took hold of her. She understood the power of the loom now. It was not a weapon to be used. It was a force to be respected. And in that moment, Lila knew what she had to do. Vincent's eyes narrowed as he watched her. "You think you can stop me? You think you can fight me, Lila? The loom is already mine. You've already lost." Lila's pulse raced as the glow surrounding Vincent intensified. It was a kind of dark energy, an energy she hadn't felt before. It was time itself, warped and twisted into something unnatural. But she wasn't afraid. She couldn't afford to be. The loom had already chosen her, and with that choice came the power to protect it, to restore balance. "No," she said, her voice calm, even as the tension between them grew. "I haven't lost. I've only just begun." In one swift motion, Lila stepped forward, pushing her palm against the mirror's surface. As her hand touched the glass, the familiar hum of the loom surged inside her, filling her veins with its power. She could feel it now, the flow of time, the heartbeat of the universe itself. The mirror shimmered, and Lila's body vibrated with energy as the threads of fate seemed to unravel and weave themselves around her, intertwining with her very being. Vincent flinched, his eyes widening in realization. "What are you doing?" Lila's focus sharpened, her eyes locking onto the center of the loom. She felt its pulse deep within her, the rhythm of time itself. And with that rhythm came a sense of clarity. She wasn't trying to control time. She wasn't trying to fight against Vincent's power. She was simply weaving her thread back into the tapestry, restoring the balance that had been disrupted. "I'm not fighting you, Vincent," Lila said, her voice steady, the weight of her decision clear in her words. "I'm protecting time, and you'll never understand it, because you can't control it. You can only respect it." With that, the glow around Vincent seemed to dissipate, his power faltering as Lila's connection to the loom deepened. The air around them shifted, the threads of time glowing and pulsing as if responding to her will. "No." Vincent's voice cracked, desperation edging his tone for the first time. He reached out, trying to grab at the air, trying to seize control, but the loom's power was slipping away from him. Lila felt the shift. The energy in the room changed, the loom's pulse becoming steady and strong, like the beat of a heart. Time itself was shifting in response to her touch. It was no longer a weapon. It was no longer a tool. It was a force to be respected, to be lived within, and to be protected. Vincent's form flickered, his figure becoming unstable, like a reflection in a broken mirror. His eyes flashed with anger, but there was something else there too, something that resembled fear. "You cannot undo what has already been done, Lila," he shouted. "The threads are already twisted. Time cannot be fixed." Lila took a deep breath, her hands still outstretched. "Time is never broken," she said softly, her words resonating with the hum of the loom. "It can only be understood. The choices we make, the paths we walk, they are all part of the weave. And I choose to protect it. I choose the balance." As she spoke, the glow around Vincent dimmed, the threads of time receding from him. He was no longer in control. The loom was. And then, with a final shuddering breath, Vincent's form vanished, fading into the ripples of time he had tried to manipulate. The loom hummed softly, its threads weaving themselves back into place, restoring the balance that had been threatened. Lila stood still, her hand still pressed against the mirror. The shop was silent once again, the air still and calm. But something had changed. Something deep inside her had shifted. She had embraced the power of the loom, and with it came the knowledge that time was not meant to be controlled, it was meant to be lived. Lila turned away from the mirror, her heart still racing but filled. Part 15. The Unwritten Path. The room felt still, too still. After Vincent's departure, the air seemed to hang heavy, as though it were holding its breath, waiting for something, anything, to shift. Lila stood before the mirror, her fingers still trembling from the power she had just wielded. It was as if the loom had become a part of her, the pulse of time now embedded deep in her chest, reverberating with every beat of her heart. She turned away from the mirror, the weight of the responsibility settling upon her. The fight with Vincent had been a pivotal moment, one where she had learned that she wasn't just a bystander in the weave of time. She had the power to influence it, not by control, but by balance. It wasn't about bending time to her will. It was about living within it, understanding its flow, and protecting it from those who sought to manipulate it for selfish gain. But even as she stood there, alone in the shop, a new thought crept into her mind, one she had been avoiding. What now? She had made her choice. She had chosen the present, and in doing so, she had restored the balance. But time wasn't static. The future wasn't fixed. There would always be threats, forces that sought to control time, to disrupt its flow. And even though she had faced Vincent, even though she had rejected the path of manipulation, she knew this was only the beginning. The loom of time was alive, constantly shifting and changing, responding to the choices of those who wove it. But she was one person, one thread in a much larger tapestry. And time, as she had learned, wasn't something that could be controlled by just one person. No, time wasn't a solitary thing. It was a collective, woven by the choices of many. Lila closed her eyes, the hum of the loom still lingering in her mind. The future was unwritten, but it was hers to shape. There was no map to guide her, no clear path. She couldn't undo the past. She couldn't control the future. But she could walk the path that was ahead of her, the one that was still being woven. She didn't know what was next. But one thing was certain, she had to keep moving forward. Time wouldn't wait for her to catch up. The loom was hers to protect, but that didn't mean she was alone in this. She had seen glimpses of the future, of the people who would help her, of the allies she would find along the way. Time was interconnected, and though it was fragile, it was also resilient. It would always find a way to repair itself. But the path to restoration, to balance, would not be easy. Lila turned toward the door of the shop, the familiar chime echoing in the stillness as she stepped out onto the quiet streets of Thornawood. The town seemed unchanged, yet she knew she had changed. The mirror, the loom, it had shown her the way, but it was up to her to walk it. The sun was setting, casting the town in golden light. The shadows stretched long across the cobblestone streets, and Lila could almost feel the weight of time in the air. The past had been woven. The present was now. And the future, well, the future was still being created. One choice at a time. She walked through the streets, her steps purposeful, the hum of the loom still in her ears. The mirror, the loom, it was all part of the same force, one that connected everything. Time wasn't linear. It wasn't just a series of events that unfolded in a straight line. Time was a web, a tapestry, and she was part of it. The weaver, the protector, the one who would ensure that it remained intact. Lila knew her journey wasn't over. There were still threads to untangle, paths to be chosen. The loom had shown her her place, her role in the grand scheme of things. But there was still so much more to discover. She didn't know who else was out there, what other threats lurked in the shadows, or what choices she would have to make in the days ahead. But she knew one thing for sure, she couldn't do it alone. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky turning a deep shade of indigo, Lila paused at the edge of the town. The world felt vast before her, a wide expanse of unknown futures. But she wasn't afraid. She had the loom. She had the mirror. She had the power to shape her destiny, and the wisdom to understand that it wasn't about control, it was about balance. A soft breeze rustled the trees around her, and Lila closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to feel the flow of time around her. It was gentle, like a river, carrying everything forward. The choices she made would ripple out, but the future was still unwritten. There was still time to decide, to shape the path ahead. And in that moment, Lila knew she wasn't just a part of time, she was time itself. And it was hers to protect. Part 16. Threads of Fate. The wind whipped through the streets of Thornawood as Lila walked, her footsteps echoing softly against the cobblestones. The town was quieter than usual, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, a deep, unsettling quiet filled the air. Even the birds had stopped chirping, and the rustling leaves seemed to murmur secrets in the wind. The world felt suspended, as though waiting for something to happen. Lila kept her pace steady, the weight of her thoughts pressing heavily on her. The loom, the mirror, it all made sense now, in ways she hadn't fully understood before. She had seen the threads of time, felt their pull, and now she knew her place within them. But despite her resolve, the uncertainty was still there. The future was unwritten. Every choice she made, every step she took, wove a new thread in the tapestry of time. It wasn't about controlling the loom, it was about living within it, respecting its flow. The sound of footsteps behind her brought Lila's thoughts back to the present. She turned, expecting to see someone from the town, but instead, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Elias. Lila's heart skipped a beat, a mix of relief and confusion flooding her chest. He hadn't been in the shop when she left, and she hadn't expected to see him again so soon. But there he was, walking toward her with that familiar calmness, his face unreadable. "Elias," she said, her voice tentative. "I thought you were gone." He stopped in front of her, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet intensity. "I've been watching over you, Lila. There's much more at play than you realize. The loom is not just a tool, it's a force. And those who understand its power are not always the ones who use it for the right reasons." Lila frowned, a sudden unease creeping into her. "What do you mean?" Elias's gaze softened, and he glanced around, as if checking to ensure they were alone. "There are others who know about the loom. Vincent was only one of them. But there are others out there, people who see time not as something to protect, but something to control, something to manipulate. And they'll stop at nothing to make sure the loom falls into the right hands." Lila's heart began to race again. Who are these people? Elias sighed, his expression darkening. "I don't know all of them, but they're known by many names. Some are old, ancient even. They've been watching the loom for centuries, waiting for the right person to come along, someone like you. Someone who can unlock its true potential. But they don't care about balance, Lila. They want power. They want to control time itself." Lila's chest tightened. She had thought Vincent was the only threat. But now, Elias was telling her that there were others who had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The weight of her responsibility felt heavier than ever. "I've already made my choice," Lila said, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. "I won't let time be controlled. I won't let anyone twist it to their own will." Elias nodded, his face serious. "You've made the right choice. But there's more you need to know. The loom is not just a tool. It's a living entity, and its power is far greater than you've realized. It can be a force for good, or it can be a weapon. And those who seek to control it are dangerous." Lila's eyes narrowed. "What do I do then? How do I stop them?" Elias's expression softened, but there was a weariness in his eyes that made Lila pause. "You can't stop them alone. You can't fight this battle on your own. But there are allies out there. People who understand the loom, who understand time, and who can help you protect it." "Who?" Lila asked, her voice full of urgency. "I can't tell you everything," Elias replied, his voice tinged with sadness. "But you'll find them, Lila. You'll find them when the time is right." The wind picked up, blowing a chill through the streets. The town around them seemed to shift, the shadows growing longer, the air thicker with tension. Lila could feel it, the storm that was coming. She wasn't just protecting time anymore. She was protecting the future. And she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. She had already made enemies. But there were allies too, she hoped. "You've learned much," Elias said, his voice softening as he reached out to place a hand on her shoulder. "But the loom is not the only thing at stake. The choices you make will ripple across time, Lila. And those who seek to control it won't give up easily. I won't let them win, Lila said, her voice filled with quiet resolve. Elias looked at her for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. Remember, Lila, the loom will show you the way. But you must choose carefully. Every thread you weave will change the future. And the consequences of those choices are far greater than you can imagine. Lila nodded, the weight of his words settling in her chest. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew she couldn't stop now. She had already chosen the present. She couldn't go back. I'll be ready, she said, her voice steady. I'll do what I have to do. Elias smiled softly, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern. You are stronger than you know, Lila. Trust in yourself and trust in the loom. It will guide you. As Elias turned to leave, Lila stood there for a moment, watching him disappear into the shadows. She could feel the pull of the loom once again, its hum vibrating deep within her. The future was still unwritten, but the choices she made now would shape it. The loom was alive, and it was calling her forward. Lila didn't know where this path would lead her, but she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't walk it alone. Part 17. The Gathering Storm. Lila walked through the streets of Thornawood, the weight of Elias's words still heavy in her chest. The loom was calling her, and the threads of time felt closer now, vibrating beneath her skin. The power was undeniable, but with it came an immense responsibility, one that she wasn't sure she was ready for. Still, there was no going back now. The future wasn't a distant thing. It was something she was already weaving, with every choice, every step she took. The wind picked up again, blowing the scent of rain across the town. The clouds overhead had turned an ominous shade of gray, and the air felt charged with energy. Lila could feel the storm coming, not just in the sky, but within herself. There was something shifting, something building in the very fabric of time, and she wasn't sure if she could control it. She reached the edge of the town, the quiet streets behind her, and stepped into the dense forest that surrounded Thornawood. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches swaying in the wind, their roots entwined deep in the earth, much like the threads of time she had come to understand. The forest felt like a threshold, a place between worlds, between what was and what could be. And it was here, at the edge of the world she knew, that she would meet the others Elias had spoken of. Her footsteps were soft on the damp earth as she ventured deeper into the forest. The air grew thicker with each step, the sounds of the town fading behind her. It felt like she was walking into another world, one where time itself was stretched thin. The weight of the loom's power was heavy in the air, pressing down on her, and she could feel the hum, the pulse of it all around her, guiding her forward. After what felt like hours, Lila reached a clearing. The trees parted to reveal a stone circle, ancient and worn, its edges overgrown with ivy and moss. In the center of the circle was a figure, a woman, tall and cloaked in dark robes. She was standing still, her face hidden beneath the hood, but there was something about her that felt familiar, like a presence Lila had known for a long time. The woman turned as Lila approached, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She didn't speak at first, only watched Lila with an unreadable expression. Lila stopped a few feet away, her heart pounding. "Are you one of the ones Elias spoke of?" she asked, her voice tentative. The woman nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I am," she replied, her voice soft but filled with authority. "You are the one Elias spoke of, the weaver, the one who has touched the loom." Lila took a step forward, her pulse quickening. "I don't understand. Elias said I would find allies, but I don't know where to begin. I don't know who to trust." The woman smiled faintly, though there was no warmth in it. "Trust is a fragile thing, Lila, but time has already shown you the way. You have made your choice, and the loom has chosen you. Now, you must learn to walk the path that lies ahead." Lila swallowed, the weight of her responsibility pressing on her chest. "But what if I make the wrong choice? What if I can't protect the loom? What if I can't stop those who seek to control it?" The woman's eyes softened, though her expression remained unreadable. That is the question, isn't it? The loom is not a thing that can be controlled. It is a force, a current that flows through time, through everything. Those who seek to manipulate it will never understand it. But you, Lila stepped forward, her heart pounding. But what about those who want to control it? What about Vincent and the others? The woman's gaze hardened, and she stepped toward Lila, her voice lowering. Vincent is not the only one who seeks the loom. There are others, ancient and powerful. They have been watching the loom for centuries, waiting for someone like you to come along. Someone who can unlock its true power. Lila's breath caught in her throat. Then how do I stop them? How do I protect it? The woman paused, her gaze distant. You must understand the loom, Lila. It is not a tool to be used. It is not a weapon to be wielded. It is a guide. And those who seek to control it, to force it into their image, will always fail. They cannot see the threads the way you do. They cannot understand the balance. Lila's mind raced, but the woman's words were beginning to sink in. But if they can't control it, then how do I stop them? How do I make sure they don't ruin time? The woman smiled, this time with a hint of knowing. You won't stop them by fighting them, Lila. You won't stop them by controlling the loom. You'll stop them by letting the loom guide you. It has already shown you the way. Lila stared at her, confusion swirling in her mind. I don't understand. How do I trust the loom if I don't know how it works? The woman stepped back, lowering her hood. Her face was older than Lila had expected, but there was a deep wisdom in her eyes, a calm that seemed to settle over Lila like a cloak. The loom is not something that can be controlled. It is something that must be respected. But it is not a mystery, Lila. It is a reflection of time itself. A reflection of your choices, your actions, your path. And those who seek to control it are only trying to change what is meant to be. Lila looked down at her hands, the power of the loom still thrumming within her. She could feel it, its pulse, its rhythm, its strength. And in that moment, she understood what the woman was saying. The loom wasn't something to fight over, something to control. It was a part of her, a part of everyone. Time was a living thing, flowing and shifting, and her role wasn't to fight it, it was to walk with it. Lila lifted her head, meeting the woman's eyes. So, I have to walk the path that the loom sets for me. I have to let it guide me. The woman nodded. Yes, but remember, Lila, the loom does not tell you what to do. It shows you what could be. The choice is yours. Lila's heart raced as the weight of her words settled in. The loom wasn't about control. It was about balance. About living within the flow of time, understanding its rhythm, and respecting the choices it offered. But how do I know I'm making the right choice? Lila asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. The woman stepped forward, her eyes softening. You won't always know. That's the nature of time. The future is unwritten, and the choices you make will shape it. But that is your gift, Lila. You are the weaver, and every thread you weave will create the future. Lila felt a surge of determination rise within her. She had chosen to protect time, not to control it. And now, more than ever, she knew what she had to do. She would trust the loom. She would walk the path that it showed her, knowing that the future was not something to be feared, but something to be shaped by the choices she made. Thank you, Lila said, her voice steady now. I think I understand. The woman nodded, her eyes filled with quiet pride. You are ready, Lila. The loom is with you, always. Lila took a deep breath, the weight of her decision settling into her bones. She wasn't alone in this. She had the loom. She had the present. And now, she was ready to face whatever came next. The woman turned to leave, disappearing into the shadows of the forest, her form melting into the darkness. Lila stood alone in the clearing, the hum of the loom still resonating deep inside her, the threads of time swirling around her. She took one last look at the clearing, then turned toward the road ahead. The future was unwritten, but the loom had already shown her the way. Part 18. The Loom's Edge. Lila walked through the forest, her steps light but her mind heavy with the woman's words. The wind had settled, but there was a tension in the air, like the calm before a storm. The loom was no longer just a tool. It was a force, and it was hers to protect. Time itself was no longer just something she observed, it was something she was a part of. She wasn't sure how long she'd been walking, but the familiar path through the woods had turned unfamiliar, the trees more ancient and twisted, the shadows longer than before. It was as though the very nature of time had shifted around her, warping as she stepped deeper into the forest. The world was different now, or maybe it was her perception that had changed. She was more attuned to the pulse of the loom, to the hum of the present, the past, and the future, all wrapped in one eternal dance. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting an eerie glow across the landscape. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist like fingers, pulling her deeper into the forest. The sense of unease from earlier began to settle in her chest again. There was something out here. She could feel it. Lila picked up her pace, her breath shallow, but just as she turned a corner, a figure appeared in the clearing ahead. Her heart skipped a beat, her instincts telling her to retreat, to be cautious. But the figure didn't move, standing still, almost as if it were waiting for her. The figure was tall and cloaked, much like the woman she had met in the forest, but this one felt different. Darker, heavier, like an imposing shadow. Lila took a cautious step forward, but the figure spoke before she could take another. "You've come far, Lila." The voice was deep, rich with authority. There was no warmth in it, only cold certainty. "But the loom is not yours to protect. It's ours to use." Lila froze, her fingers twitching at her sides as if instinctively reaching for something that wasn't there. "Who are you?" Her voice was steady, but her heart was pounding. "What do you want with the loom?" The figure slowly lifted its hood, revealing the face of an older man, his features sharp and angular, his eyes dark and cold, with an ancient gleam. "I am the keeper," he said, his voice echoing in the stillness of the forest. "And the loom is not a tool for children to play with. You are but a thread, Lila. A thread in a much larger tapestry." Lila's pulse quickened. "The loom is not for control," she said, her voice steady but filled with the urgency of what she was feeling. "It's for balance. For the future." The keeper's lips curled into a slight, cynical smile. "Balance? The future is shaped by power, not balance. Those who control time, control everything." Lila's stomach churned as she realized the full weight of his words. He wasn't speaking of the loom in the way she had come to understand it. The keeper was not interested in preserving time. He sought to manipulate it, to use it for his own gain, just like Vincent had. But there was something even more dangerous about him. He wasn't just an individual. He was part of a much larger force, a collective of those who had been guarding and manipulating the loom for centuries. "I won't let you do this," Lila said, her voice unwavering. "The loom doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to time. It can't be controlled." The keeper's smile faltered, his eyes narrowing. "You still don't understand. You think the loom is a gift, a thing to be respected. But it is a power to be claimed. And you," he stepped forward, his presence intimidating, "you are the key to unlocking that power, whether you accept it or not." Lila could feel the pull of the loom, faint at first, then growing stronger, like a silent current beneath her skin. The keeper wasn't just speaking metaphorically. He truly believed that the loom could be claimed, that time itself could be harnessed. The realization hit her like a storm. "You think you can take control of the loom, but you're wrong," she said, stepping back, the loom's hum vibrating through her as though the forest itself was alive. "I won't let you destroy what it is." The keeper's expression darkened. "You have no choice in this. The loom will never be yours to protect unless you accept the truth." He lifted a hand, and the air around them thickened, the shadows lengthening, twisting as though the forest itself was being pulled into the void. It's already been set in motion, Lila. You are part of the loom's design, just as we all are. But unlike you, I know the true power it holds. Lila took a step back, her mind racing. This was it. This was the moment she had feared. The moment when the loom's true power would be sought by those who didn't care about time, about balance. She had to protect it. But how? The keeper's hand dropped, and the ground beneath Lila's feet trembled, the earth shifting in time with his movements. Time bends at the will of those who understand it, he said, his voice low and threatening. You may think you're in control now, but the loom's power is not something that can be contained by your ideals. Lila closed her eyes for a moment, drawing on the energy that had begun to resonate in her chest. She wasn't just the weaver anymore. She had become something more, something that understood the pulse of time, that felt it move through her and around her. The air thickened, the shadows around her seeming to close in. But Lila wasn't afraid. She was no longer just a thread in the loom. She was the protector. She was the one who had to stop the forces that sought to unravel time itself. With a steady breath, Lila stepped forward, the hum of the loom growing louder in her mind. You don't understand, Keeper, she said, her voice clear and resolute. I'm not here to control time. I'm here to protect it. She reached out, her hand moving toward the earth beneath her feet, her fingers grazing the soil as if connecting with the very fabric of time itself. She could feel the loom, deep within the forest, its threads glowing in the distance, waiting for her. For the first time, she felt the loom's full power coursing through her, not as a weapon, not as something to control, but as something that could heal, that could restore balance. The keeper hesitated for just a moment, sensing the shift in the air, the change that was happening before his eyes. His expression twisted in anger. You fool, he hissed, his voice growing more forceful. You don't realize what you're standing in the way of. You'll never understand the true power of the loom. You will never. Before he could finish, the earth shook violently beneath them. The ground cracked open, and the roots of the trees, like great serpents, began to twist and turn, forming a barrier between Lila and the keeper. The keeper staggered back, his eyes wide with shock as the forest itself began to react, the loom's pulse thrumming louder and louder. This is impossible, he shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. But it was already too late. Lila had embraced the loom's true power, and with that, she had become its protector. She wasn't here to control time, she was here to defend it from those who sought to distort it. The keeper fell to his knees, his hand reaching out as though trying to grab hold of the unraveling power that was slipping through his fingers. Lila didn't hesitate. She raised her hand, and the loom responded, its threads glowing with a brilliant, blinding light. And then, with a final surge of energy, the keeper was consumed by the light, his form disintegrating into the air like dust carried away by the wind. Part 19. The Loom's Echo. The air in the clearing was still, the energy from the battle with the keeper slowly dissipating. Lila stood alone, surrounded by the deep shadows of the forest, her heart pounding in her chest. She had won, for now, but she could feel the pulse of the loom, faint but constant, reverberating through her, reminding her that her task wasn't over. It had only just begun. The keeper was gone, his form consumed by the light of the loom. But his words lingered in her mind, his voice echoing in the silence. The loom is not yours to protect. It is ours to use. She shook her head, banishing the thought. She was the one who had chosen this path. She was the one who would protect the loom, not control it. Lila took a deep breath, steadying herself, and started walking through the forest, the weight of her decision settling more heavily on her shoulders. She wasn't alone. Elias had spoken of others, those who understood the loom, those who would stand with her. But where were they? And who could she trust? She had already seen how dangerous the path could be when Vincent sought to manipulate the loom, and now the keeper's presence had only deepened the shadows in her mind. The path ahead was unclear, but there was one thing Lila knew for certain. Time wasn't something to be bent to her will. It was a force, wild, unpredictable, and it had to be protected. The trees around her seemed to part, and the familiar path appeared before her. Her mind was focused, but the energy of the loom was still alive within her, buzzing like electricity. She wasn't sure where to go next, but the loom had already shown her the way. She trusted it. The future, like the loom itself, was full of potential. As she walked, the forest began to thin, and the town of Thornawood slowly came back into view. The warm glow of twilight cast long shadows across the cobblestone streets, and a faint breeze rustled through the trees. But there was something different now, an unease in the air, a stillness that hadn't been there before. Lila stopped for a moment, her eyes scanning the town. Something was off. She could feel it. The hum of the loom was stronger now, as if it were calling to her, urging her to move. She could hear it in the air, the way the wind whispered, as if it carried the echoes of time itself. She began walking faster, her pace quickening as the sense of urgency grew. She was almost back to the shop, when a figure appeared in the distance, standing in front of the entrance to the mirror of lost time. The person was cloaked, their face hidden in shadow. Lila's instincts kicked in, and she reached for the power within her. She had no idea who this person was, but her senses told her they weren't just a traveler passing through. The figure stood motionless, watching her approach. As Lila drew closer, the figure finally spoke, their voice low but clear. "You've come far, Lila." The voice was familiar, yet unsettling. "But you've only seen a fraction of the loom's true power." Lila froze. She knew this voice. It was Vincent. Her heart clenched in her chest, and her fingers tightened at her sides. She hadn't expected to see him again, hadn't expected him to return so soon. But here he was, standing in front of her, as though nothing had changed. "You," she said, her voice low, filled with a quiet fury. "What do you want, Vincent?" He stepped closer, his figure emerging from the shadows like a specter. The familiar coldness was in his eyes, but there was something different in his expression now. He wasn't angry, not like before. He was calm, too calm. "I want what you have," Vincent said, his voice soft, but there was a weight to his words. "You've become the weaver, the protector of time, and you've seen what the loom can do. But you don't understand its true power. You don't know what you're guarding." Lila stood her ground, her heart racing. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. But there was something in his tone, something that suggested he wasn't here just to talk. "I know exactly what I'm protecting," she said. "Time isn't yours to control. It's not a tool to be used. It's a force to be respected." Vincent's lips curled into a faint, almost amused smile. "Respect. Yes, that's what you've learned. But the loom, Lila, it's not just a force. It's a weapon. And if you don't learn how to wield it, others will." Lila shook her head, anger bubbling inside her. "I won't let you turn time into a weapon, Vincent. You tried that before, and look where it got us." Vincent's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. "You think I failed?" "No, Lila, I didn't fail. I just wasn't ready. But now, you've given me the perfect opportunity." He reached into his cloak and pulled out something that made Lila's heart stop, a small, glowing orb. The light inside it flickered like a heartbeat, pulsing with energy. The loom, the power to manipulate time. But in this form, it was a weapon, a tool of destruction. Lila stepped back, her mind racing. This was what he had been after all along. He wasn't interested in the loom for balance. He wasn't interested in its beauty or its intricacies. He was interested in its power. The power to change time, to control it, to rewrite it. "No," Lila said, her voice steady but filled with a raw determination. "You won't get away with this, Vincent." He tilted his head, looking at her with an unsettling calm. "You don't have a choice, Lila. You've already seen the loom's power. You've already seen what it can do. You can't walk away from this. Not now. Not after you've touched the heart of time." Lila felt the pull of the loom again, stronger this time. It wasn't just a pulse. It was a force, calling to her, urging her to act. The orb in Vincent's hand glowed brighter, but Lila didn't move. She stood firm, the loom's power rising within her like a wave. "Vincent," she said, her voice sharp, "you don't understand. The loom isn't a weapon. It's not something to control. It's something to live with. You can't force it. It's not for you to use. You'll destroy everything if you keep trying." Vincent's gaze darkened, and for a moment, Lila saw the anger flicker in his eyes. But then it was gone, replaced by something more dangerous. "You're weak, Lila. You're afraid of the loom's power. But that's what makes you a fool." He raised the orb, and for a moment, Lila felt the ground beneath her feet tremble. The power of the loom was surging, but this time, it wasn't being used for balance. It was being used for control, for destruction. Without thinking, Lila reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of the mirror beside her. In an instant, the power surged through her, the loom's hum filling her ears, growing louder, stronger. The mirror's surface rippled, its reflection distorting. "Don't," she said, her voice filled with the power of the loom. "I won't let you use it. You can't control time. No one can." Lila's hand shot forward, the mirror glowing with the power of the loom, the threads of time swirling around her. She could feel the energy, raw and wild, flowing through her, connecting her to the very heart of time itself. Vincent stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock as the orb in his hand began to crack, the light dimming. He tried to hold on, but the loom's power was slipping through his fingers, like sand through an hourglass. "You're too late," Lila said, her voice unwavering. "The loom is not a weapon. It's not something to control. It's a force to be respected." With a final surge of energy. Part 20. The Unraveling. Lila stood in the quiet clearing, the echoes of the battle with Vincent still reverberating in the air. The shattered remnants of the orb lay scattered around her feet, dimly glowing with the last vestiges of the loom's power. The silence that followed the eruption of energy was deafening, almost unnatural. The wind had stopped, the birds had gone silent, and the very trees seemed to hold their breath. She couldn't shake the feeling that the calm was temporary, that something else was coming, something far worse than Vincent's ambitions. She had stopped him for now, but he wasn't the only one who sought the loom's power. The Keeper had spoken of others, ancient forces that had been watching time for centuries, waiting for a moment to strike. Lila had just begun to understand the weight of her role as the loom's protector, but she wasn't ready for what was coming next. The hum of the loom still vibrated in the air, a constant presence deep within her, like a heartbeat she could no longer ignore. Time itself was alive, alive in a way that both comforted and terrified her. She wasn't just walking through time anymore. She was part of it, woven into its very fabric, and the threads that had been so carefully laid out before her were beginning to fray. A sudden rustling in the distance broke her thoughts. Lila instinctively stepped back, her heart racing. Was someone else coming for the loom? Was it more of the dark forces Vincent had alluded to? But when the figure emerged from the shadows, it wasn't one of Vincent's allies, or enemies, as far as she could tell. It was Elias. His expression was as unreadable as ever, but there was something different in his eyes, a glint of urgency, of something far deeper than the calm guidance he had shown her before. "You've done it," Elias said, his voice heavy, his tone more somber than she had ever heard it. "But this is just the beginning, Lila." Lila's gaze swept over him, her instincts still on high alert. The air around them felt thick, heavy with the same sense of danger that had been growing ever since she first stepped into the forest. "What do you mean?" "I stopped Vincent. The loom's power is protected." Elias's eyes hardened, and for the first time, there was a tension in his posture, a strain in his voice. "You don't understand. You think the loom's power is just something that can be protected, something that can be contained. But that's not the full truth. The loom is not just an object or a force, it's a gateway, a connection to something far more ancient, far more dangerous than you realize." Lila's breath caught in her throat. "A gateway?" To what? Elias looked at her with a mixture of pity and regret. A gateway to the beginning of time. The loom doesn't just weave the threads of the present and the future. It connects to the very source of time itself, the heart of creation. But with that connection comes a cost. The more the loom is manipulated, the more its true nature is revealed, the more the fabric of time begins to unravel. Lila's mind raced. Unravel? You're telling me that by protecting the loom, I'm causing it to break? Elias nodded grimly. Not you, specifically. But the loom is sensitive. The more it is used, the more its power is exposed, the more fragile the threads of time become. And time is not infinite. It is cyclical, but fragile. The more you manipulate it, the more the danger increases. Lila's pulse quickened. She had thought that by protecting the loom, she was doing the right thing. But now, it felt as if she were standing on the edge of something much bigger, something beyond her understanding. Then what am I supposed to do? Elias's eyes flickered with uncertainty, a rare crack in his usually steadfast demeanor. The loom was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be respected. Time cannot be contained or manipulated without consequences. There are others who understand the loom's power, and they want to unlock it, to bend it to their will. But there are rules to this game, Lila. And you, as its protector, must learn those rules before it's too late. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, and Lila felt the reality of the situation begin to sink in. The loom wasn't just a tool for protection. It was a link to something far deeper, a force that could either sustain or destroy the very fabric of time itself. I don't understand, she whispered, shaking her head. If the loom is this powerful, this dangerous, how can anyone be trusted with it? Elias stepped closer, his voice soft but urgent. You were chosen for a reason, Lila. You have a gift that others do not. But this gift is not one of power or control. It is a gift of understanding. You are meant to protect the loom, but that does not mean you control it. You must learn its true purpose, and in doing so, you will learn to preserve the balance. Lila felt a chill run through her, the weight of his words settling on her shoulders like a mantle. And if I fail? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias's eyes were filled with a depth of sadness and understanding. If you fail, the threads of time will unravel. The loom's power will be taken, and everything you know, everything that has ever been, will collapse. The future will cease to exist, and the past will fade away. There will be no more time. Lila's breath caught in her throat. She had thought she was ready for anything. She had thought that by protecting the loom, she was guarding time itself. But now, the enormity of her task seemed insurmountable. The loom was not just a force to be wielded. It was a living entity, connected to the very heart of time. And the cost of failure was unimaginable. What do I do now? Lila asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. Elias paused for a long moment, his gaze distant as if searching for the right words. You must go to the heart of creation. The loom's true purpose lies there, and you must face what waits for you. It is not a journey you can make alone, but it is one you must take. Lila's heart raced. The heart of creation. But how do I find it? And what will I face when I get there? Elias's expression grew serious. The heart of creation is hidden, but the loom will guide you. The path will not be easy, and the choices you make along the way will have consequences. But if you are to protect time, if you are to protect the future, you must face the heart of the loom itself. Lila stood still, her mind swirling with the enormity of the journey ahead. The loom was not just an object to protect. It was a link to something much more ancient, much more powerful than anything she had ever imagined. And she had no choice but to find it. I'll do it, she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. I'll go to the heart of creation. Elias nodded, his eyes filled with both pride and worry. Be careful, Lila. The path you walk will change you. But it is the only way. With that, He turned and disappeared into the shadows of the forest, leaving Lila standing alone in the clearing. The loom's hum resonated through her once more, but now it felt different, stronger, deeper. She wasn't just a protector anymore. She was part of the loom. She was part of time itself. The future, once a distant thing, was now something she could reach out and touch. But she knew that the path ahead would not be easy. The loom's power was not a gift, it was a responsibility. And to protect it, to preserve the balance, she would have to face what lay at the heart of creation. And so, with